Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am back for another Slim Sports interview. And as always, I'm your host, Jay Slim. And joining me today is one of the most dominant edge rushers in the ACC this past season, led Wake Forest in sacks for what was an absolute bounce back year for the Demon Deacons in year one of a new head coach that we'll touch on here in a bit. But ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you, the phenom himself, 6'4" defensive end, Langston Hardy. What's going on, man?
How you doing? I appreciate the warm welcome.
Hey, absolutely, man. After the season you just put on, you deserve the best intro possible. And I always try to have fun with the intros when it comes to introducing you guys, hyping
Right.
you up like you deserve. And I
Thank you very
want
much.
fans, viewers that are just now getting to learn your name, get to see your face for the first time, to get to learn some of the accolades to your name in a quick segment that I like to call Resume Rundown, where I'm going to show off a nice little graphic of your career, what you've done so far. And I'm going to highlight this year specifically. I mentioned before, Wake Forest, you led them in sacks with 7 on the season. Ended up helping this defense to be fourth in the ACC in yards allowed per game, absolutely dominating on the defensive side of the ball. You yourself, you were an All-ACC selection as well, and ended up leading your team to the Mayo Bowl, raising a trophy at the end of the season. So incredible year for you, and this was your first year with Wake Forest, as
Mm.
well as year one for head coach Jake Dickert, who came in and started a new regime, started a new culture his way with the Wake Forest era. And you guys were able to obviously have an incredible year right off the bat. Talk to me real quick about your culture from your career and the culture that he put in place at Wake Forest this year. How did it blend to where you guys were able to find instant success?
Right. I think for me just as an athlete, I mean I at a high school went up to UConn up in Connecticut, and early on I had some injury problems, so it kind of restricted how hard I can get on the field. Once I finally was able to get my opportunity, I was able to have a decent year. But just for me, it was just always just staying to the work, just going back to the books and just staying on top of, what I need to accomplish, trying to get myself healthy, strengthen my body, make sure I'm ready to play at the college level. And that was just the biggest thing for me early on. Once I was able to get the opportunity, I had a, pretty good year in 24. And so I decided to enter the portal. Um, and just talking with Coach Dicker at first on the phone, obviously a very high energy guy. I think everybody notices that just through the way he talks. If you've seen any video about the way, him talking or talking to anybody, you see the energy just radiates through his voice. And I think that was a big part for me. Also, my brother, he was already at Wake Forest. He's a redshirt freshman. He'll be going into his redshirt sophomore year next year. Have a bigger role in the team. And that was also a big part of it, being an opportunity to play with him. But then once we got there and got to work, the biggest message we always had was to stay in the dark. That was a slogan that was all across the facility, all in the meeting rooms, every building. And I think that the biggest thing is, we were obviously projected to be a low rated team in the ACC. And we had a lot of guys in there who were a lot from different places, guys who still retain with the Wake Forest staff, but it's a lot of guys with different, backgrounds all across the country. Of course, he brought in guys from Washington State, so a lot of guys from California out west, and a lot of East Coast guys, Midwest guys. So we were really trying to see how quickly we can, mesh and gain that trust together. And that slogan, "Stay in the dark," is something that stuck with us throughout the whole season, and we would always reference it. And I think that's really what was a good bond for us to, hold on to for the whole season.
Absolutely. He changed his program from going 4-8 in 2024 to a 9-4 overall record this past season, 4-4 in a very tough ACC conference. You guys
Mhm.
ended up taking down number 14 Virginia 16-9, took down SMU 13-12, and UNC 28-12. So some big time defensive performances by you guys. And
Mhm.
Mississippi State in the Mayo Bowl said, "Hey, this is our time to shine. See you later, Bulldogs. Let the Demon Deacons shine." 43-29 win in that bowl game, obviously capping off a fantastic year where the
Right.
defense in 2024, the defense ranked second to last in points allowed per game. This year, you guys climbed up those rankings, ended up being seventh in the ACC, went from averaging 32 points per game to 22 points per game this past season. So obviously, big improvement. Went from being last in yards allowed per game to fourth, going from 435 yards per game allowed to 328. Just absolutely incredible. Talk to me about the defensive scheme and how you guys were able to elevate these numbers?
Right. I mean, we had guys, really every position. The big thing about the defense though is our senior captain leader, Nick Anderson, he's been at Wake Forest for 6 years, really before I even got into college. And so it was a guy who I knew about just from, being a college football fan. And really being an opportunity to play with him was very special. He's a great leader, great individual. I'm really, looking forward to what he does and, continue on his football career. But he was, like I said, mainly like the captain for our defense. So starting with the secondary, like those guys, we didn't play. Really, our philosophy was mainly like we played a lot of deeper zones, try to keep everything in front of us. We were, good at getting up explosive plays, but when we needed to, we had guys out there who can, play man to man and do everything you need them to do. Ladarius Webb, KP, Braylon Johnson, all guys who really stepped up in the secondary for us. And then with the linebackers, Dylan Hazen, Quincy Bryant, Frank Casano, Aiden Hall, all those guys too, who just like we had a real deep roster, so we were able to rotate the whole game. Like the linebackers had rotations where it could be they'd have like certain plays that they'd be out there, and they just kept for fresh rotation in. So it was always linebackers who are flying around, making plays, in the pass game, also in the run game, and then up front. Our identity was, we just wanted to make, every play we could. So, we had the ability to do a lot of things up front, a lot of stunts and different movements that really helped me the season with, Coach Hayes and the defense and guys up front like, Jay and Loving, Dallas Afalafa, Mateen, Gabe Newer, Tyler Walton, just like, like I said, just a steady rotation of guys. And I've never really been on a team this deep with just talent at every position to where we were always fresh in the games. We were always, ready to fly around. 11 hats to the ball was a big thing for us. So that was, with having all that depth, it was easy for us to do that throughout the whole season.
Absolutely. And you guys started the season off strong, 2-0 with wins over Kennesaw State and Western Carolina, before falling in a pair of games against NC State and number 16, Georgia Tech. How would you compare those first two games and the third and the fourth game of the season as far as what you guys were able to find the cracks of the defense or even on the offensive side of the ball to where you guys were able to make those adjustments real quick? All right, hey, we did these things good in those first two games. Third in games 3 and 4, we need to improve on this, and then obviously go off and go 7-2 the rest of the way, leading you guys to a bowl game championship.
Right. Yeah, I think even that the first game that's it was only a 10-9 game. So we were of course happy that we won, but just disappointed. We thought that it would probably be we'd have a better showing. Kansas State was actually a a really good team this year. But for us it was mainly like coach told us that every single game up until I think it was probably game 7 or 8 we played. But like since from that moment, like every game we were improving. So like we lost, the heartbreaker, Georgia Tech, which one call could have went our way. We could have won that game. Um, but I think just like the improvement was mainly just like truly just buying in on the messages. Sticking to the work that we had put in already, and just like knowing that we're able to accomplish these things, and we really just had to refocus ourselves and all buy into the message and just go out there and play. And we were able to stick to that and win some bigger games down the line. But of course, we'd like to have some of those games back. We would like to win those ACC games. Win those North Carolina games to be the top team in the area. So looking forward to playing NC State and Georgia Tech next year too.
Absolutely, man. Definitely can't wait for the rematch, see what ends up happening. I have a feeling Demon Deacons are coming out on top with you obviously leading the way on the defensive line, doing what you do this past season, and that has put up some big time highlights, big time plays throughout the year. And I want to talk about some of them specifically in a quick segment that I like to call Make That Play, where I went through your film this past year and I put together what I felt like were your top three plays from this past season. But obviously, I'm just a stats guy, I'm just a fan in the stands. You're the one on the field doing what you do best. So, what would you say was your best play from this past season?
Mm. Um, kind of like excluding the stats, I think the SMU game was big. My guy Newer, Gatkuth and Gabe Kursky, we both had we all had really good rushing games that game. I think between the three of us, we had probably around 15 pressures, just like real just dominant in the backfield. And I think that going into the game, we heard a lot about SMU and their athletic, tackles, and it was like a big challenge for us heading into the game, and people wanted to see like how we'd be able to hold up, and I think we really just excelled and just kind of showed the rest of the conference that we had guys over here who can make some big plays. So I think even though, excluding the stats, I think that was a, good game for me. Also, just my, natural development to give me some more of that confidence to know that, I can go up and, rush against all these different guys and, have success, in big games and things like that. So I think that was probably just overall a big game for me. For a specific play, I don't know, potentially I had the 2.5 sacks in the second game against Western Carolina, some good rushes there. So potentially, maybe one of those sacks there.
One
But
of those is at number one on my list, actually, but I'm going to start off at number three, which number three is against Oregon State. Big 5 yard sack there where you ended up shutting off the block with ease. Did not get tricked by the fake handoff, ended up tracking down the quarterback, made a beeline straight for him, wrapped up and annihilated him behind the line of scrimmage to set the Beavers back. So that one I have at number three.
Mm,
Number two, Virginia Tech, 11 yard sack, put them down. Started on the edge, shifted during the play to run up the gap in the middle, and ended up dominating straight through anybody that tried to block you to get straight to the quarterback, throw him down to the ground for another big time sack on the stat sheet. Number
mm,
one, I had the 10 yard sack against Western Carolina where you powered through the offensive tackle's block attempt, reached out to grab the quarterback, and not only did you bring the quarterback down, you brought the offensive lineman down with. Obviously, you were able to make those three plays and a whole lot more throughout the year. And this defensive scheme really seemed to utilize your strength at a high level, able to use your athleticism, your burst of speed, the intensity, and the IQ that you have in the best ways possible to put up some great numbers that we'll touch on here in a minute. But what was it that really seemed to appeal to you with this defensive scheme as far as utilizing your strengths to where you were able to get in the backfield for these TFLs and these sacks?
mm. Yeah, first thing I give a lot of credit to our in DC Coach Hazelton and my position coach, Coach TJ. Just because I was being, like you said, I was put in a lot of positions where I can make plays. I got to line up in a few different spots, and it really is be out there on the edge. Being that nine technique and really get the good angles on the tackles and the tight ends and stuff to really put myself at advantage. So I think them just having the trust in me to be in that position and make the plays because they obviously the position I am in, being at that we call the position X, but like the outside linebacker position who can rush and drop and do different things on the field. I think it just really just allows me to use every talent that God gave me and just go out there and make those plays I need to make.
Absolutely. And obviously, I mentioned some of those plays and make that play. And your numbers on the season, absolutely incredible for you. Career highs across the board, 67 tackles on the year, 17 TFLs, 7 sacks. Had 8 tackles, 2 TFLs against Duke. In game three of the season, you had 7 tackles with 3 TFLs against NC State, where the first couple games of the season really seemed to set the tone for you, where you were able to get your name known and get on the scouting reports on some of these opposing offenses of, hey, we're going to have to double team this guy. But
Mhm.
when they double teamed you, you had a lot of other of your teammates able to make plays as well, as you mentioned before. So talk to me real quick about how those first couple of games really set the tone for you throughout the season, and how did you make adjustments as other teams tried to make adjustments specifically for you?
Right. I think like I said, going into the year, of course, new to the conference, new to the area, I was just, trying to do everything I can just to know, to help my teammates know that, I'm a, guy who they can count on and, rely on and just, make a name for myself, for the fans and for the team and just to do my job. And I think kind of just as the season went on, like I said, we just all gelled well together that we, I knew that if this play, like you said, if I got doubled on this play, I knew that, a guy inside like, Jay Love or Dallas or, Gabe, they're gonna make that play. Um, if it gets through, one of, if I make a mistake or whatever, I know someone else behind me has my back, with any of the linebackers or secondary guys. So I think just the fact that we were all so close, really helped us throughout the whole year, even off the field, that, we just had that trust that, anyone can make the plays. And just kind of as the season went for myself, um, of course, I would have my own, game plans that I would do watching, my opponents and watching the tackles, the tight ends and everything. And regardless of what, the matchup was is I'm, looking to see what moves I think will work best for me here and against this different guy. And so just, trying to switch it up and, not, be too predictable out there is a big thing. I like the, having the different speed and power moves is, kind of how I like to highlight my game. So just being able to continue to work on that and switch it up throughout the season, I think was able to find me some success.
Absolutely, man. And you were one of a dominant trio on this defensive line, able to get to the quarterback and in the backfield whenever you guys wanted to. Obviously, yourself, Gabe, who he had 9 TFLs and 5 sacks there, and then Newer. And I mean, that's just a few names on a list of so many that were just talented at getting into the backfield. So,
Right.
talk to me real quick about how this defensive line and the defense as a whole was able to really thrive at getting into the backfield.
Yeah, I think, like I said, all credit to Coach Hayes and just the defense in general and the amount of movements and stunts and pressures and stuff that we ran really always kept the offense guessing. We could run different blitzes, have all these different fronts and different things like that, which it might look confusing, to someone watching, but really, being in those rooms, of course, it's taught, really well. We have great coaches, great staff. And so we're just always out there, flying around making the plays that, we're able to make. I think just with like you said, with us also being so close, regardless of who was in the game, we know we had that trust that that guy was going to make the play. And really every play was, bound for someone to make. So it's just like we were just having, really just having fun out there and just doing, playing within the scheme and making our plays within the scheme and just, happy for each other to see each other's success.
Absolutely, man. And obviously, that success led you guys to the Mayo Bowl, competing against Mississippi State. Ended up coming out on top, got to hold up a trophy at the end of the game. And you guys were able to obviously have this bounce back year in 2025 for the Demon Deacons, obviously starting a new era with a new coaching staff as a whole. And obviously, yourself being one of the new players, new faces for this team. Talk to me real quick about this win over Mississippi State, the overall experience, the game execution that led to you guys holding up a trophy, and what it really meant to have this kind of impact for the Demon Deacons program and bring them back to the promised land.
Right. I think Coach Digger said it was 34 or 36 days that we played like that game was since us playing football that last game against Duke, and so obviously we knew that was the same thing for Mississippi State. So it's gonna be a game that all haven't played in a while. We had Chris's break in between, so, not playing until January 2nd. So it was a long time, a long build up process. Focusing only on one team, which is always can be sometimes a little difficult. But I think we managed it really well. Like we had a good schedule heading into it. We were able to come home for Christmas for a few days and get back to it. But those practices before Christmas were very physical. Um, that was the main, chunk of our bowl prep for Mississippi State, going through all the game plans and everything. And like I said, it was very physical practices and probably the most physical we had since, camp, really, since we had that time off. And then once we got back from Christmas break, it was more so just polishing up on all the work we put in, beforehand. So I think, credits to the coaches and we had a good schedule heading into it and had some good practices while we were at the bowl site while still having fun with the guys and everything. So it's really all led to us having a good victory out there. Like I said, the game was um it was a cool game to be at the Mayo Bowl and see all the different festivities with it. So, I was glad that we were able to get the win.
Absolutely, man. And you were one of a lot of dogs on this team this past season. I mentioned some of your teammates from the defensive line, even though I cannot pronounce their last names, and I apologize, but maybe you can pronounce their last names, and maybe you want to shout them out in a segment that we're about to get into called Who's Up Next, where you have the opportunity to recommend some players to have on the podcast where I can get their names out there, talk about their stories, their careers, just as you're doing now. So, who would you say is next up on the Slim Sports podcast?
Let's see. For guys who, I mean, I definitely, a guy who I became pretty close with this year, Newer Gatkuth is, how you pronounce his last name, but he had a little bit of a weird situation because he had applied for next year at the NCAA and somehow got denied, but it was really had to do with a prep school and high school, and so weird situation. So it's unfortunate, but I think he's still gonna figure out his situation, and it would be cool to get his story out there. Gabe Kiersky, everyone messes up his last name. I mess it up, sometimes too. But like I said, another guy who I became pretty close with throughout the year. He had broke his hand actually the first, I think it was like the second to last week at camp. So we didn't know for sure if he was going to be ready to go by the first game. And he clubbed up his hand and played at the club for 3 weeks. So, he has definitely had a great story. And then a guy who's definitely, next up here in Winston-Salem and a guy who will definitely be talking about a lot next year, Camden Hardy, my brother too. We have a big role in this defense next year, and I'm really excited to be able to play alongside of him and see him all the work that he's put in and see all that stuff come to light. So I said those would probably be the three guys I would say.
There you go, man. Definitely can't wait to see you and your brother on the field together, dominating left and right, just like you were able to do with the Demon Deacons defense this past season in 2025. And obviously, you're looking towards 2026. We talked about some of those rematches, getting on top of NC State and Georgia Tech in 2026, and hopefully not only making it to another bowl game, but winning the ACC and maybe even having a shot at the college football playoffs. So, what are you doing specifically to really enhance your game, enhance your abilities to come in and make an even bigger impact, go from maybe 7 sacks to possibly double figures into a next season to help out Wake Forest 2026?
Right. I say for me personally, I think the biggest thing I can improve. Um, with my game, some probably some footwork things and different things. With my parents and my support system, parents, girlfriend, brother, everything, all involved. Of course, they all try to figure out the best things for us to develop and continue to play this game and continue to chase the dreams that we want to chase. I'm actually home now for a couple of days until I go back out to school. And since I've been home, my brother and I have been doing some wrestling things, working with a trainer there and just, trying to learn different things within different sports and see how those things can relate to football and learn some more things about, base and different moves from there. And just, like I said, just trying anything you can to give yourself a little bit of a competitive advantage. I think that's something I've done all my life, playing a lot of different sports. And, it's all helped me to, relate back to football and just continue to hone in on the different passers moves and like I said, always keeping guys guessing with the different speed and power moves and find little tendencies on different guys just to, like I said, boost myself overall. And, and I want to also step into, help my guys out and being a voice on this defense next year and just making sure we're all ready to go. And like you said, have a even more successful year next year and just get back in the dark.
Hey, there we go. Can't wait. Love how you quote the slogan right there. Really ties everything together from the start of the interview there, staying in the dark. So, cannot wait to see what you guys do in 2026. Obviously, dominating left and right once again. Hopefully, holding up multiple trophies throughout the year on top of a very talented ACC conference going into next season, man. So, beyond thankful to have had you on, and thank you so much for hopping on the podcast in what is a very busy schedule for you. I know right now, helping out your family at home. So, thank you so much for taking time to hop on.
All right. Thank you very much. Great to meet you.